At my own baby shower, his ex walked in, 6 months pregnant, glowing and smiling like she belonged there. Nathan, my husband, turned pale. His mother beamed like she'd orchestrated the entire thing. I stood, excused myself politely, then sent a photo of the DNA results to the group chat. Her baby wasn't his, and neither was mine. 5 months pregnant, wide awake at 2:17 a.m., I lay watching the ceiling fan cast lazy shadows across our bedroom. Nathan's phone lit up, casting a blue glow on his face. He read something, eyes scanning fast, jaw tightening. Then he glanced over and whispered, "Just work. Go back to sleep," before slipping out and closing the bathroom door behind him. I didn't go back to sleep. It hadn't been just work for weeks now. Late nights, locked doors, sudden trips. I'd spent days trying to convince myself it was hormones, that I was being paranoid. But that night, my hand resting on the small curve of my belly, I knew something had shifted. Something was coming undone. I wasn't supposed to end up in Nathan Carter's world. Girls like me didn't marry into families like his. Families with trust funds, Ivy League diplomas, and names engraved on buildings. I grew up in a rented duplex in Stockton, California, where bills came in red envelopes and dinner was whatever we could stretch from food stamps. Before Nathan, my proudest accomplishment was building a wedding planning business from the ground up. I started with Craigslist ads and backyard ceremonies, eventually working my way into the wine country scene. That's how I met him. He was hosting his firm's anniversary gala, and I was the planner they called last minute when the original one bailed. He showed up at the venue in a tailored navy suit, sunglasses tucked into his collar, asking for espresso and Wi-Fi. I expected another rich client who barely saw me, just another vendor. But then he actually looked at me, really looked, and smiled. "Samantha, right? Like the name tag," he'd said, glancing at my clipboard. "Sam," I'd corrected, just to see if he'd notice. He did. He started coming by the office more often, bringing coffee, asking about my business. Then dinners, a vineyard picnic. Long drives through the coast. He'd listen like my stories were the most interesting things he'd ever heard. "You see details no one else does," he told me once. "That's what makes you different." 8 months after our first date, he proposed under an old olive tree on his family's estate, just as the sun dipped below the hills. There was no big speech, just a question. And my answer. I moved into his world slowly, one closet drawer at a time. His mother, Evelyn, welcomed me with rehearsed politeness and constant reminders of what being a Carter meant. She hosted dinners with seating charts and asked questions that felt more like pop quizzes. She'd touch my shoulder and say things like, "We just want you to feel comfortable here, Samantha," in a tone that made it clear I never would be. The wedding was elegant and impersonal. Evelyn had planned most of it. My mother sat near the back, quiet in her off-the-rack dress, trying not to look overwhelmed by the silver chargers and calligraphy place cards. For a while, I played my role. Showroom wife, polished smile, silent at board dinners. But it never felt like mine. Then I found out I was pregnant. For one brief moment, Evelyn's facade cracked. She hugged me, told me a baby changed everything. And for a moment, I believed her. But Nathan changed too. Subtle at first, longer hours, cooler kisses. Then came the new phone password, the hushed calls, and the business trips that always seemed to line up with unexplained expenses on his credit card. The first real warning came from someone I hadn't seen in years. I was at the hospital for a routine scan, waiting for my mother to park the car. A voice behind me said, "Sam Quinn?" I turned. "Jade?" She hugged me. We'd known each other in community college, back when we both worked nights and took day classes. "You look amazing. When are you due?" "August." She smiled. "Crazy. We're both expecting. Actually, you won't believe this. I ran into Brooke Adams at my OB's last week. She's pregnant too. You remember her, right?" She dated. Your husband in college. My chest went cold. She moved back recently, said she's due in November. I tried to laugh, play it off, but the math was already spinning in my head. November meant she conceived in February. The same February, Nathan had an emergency conference in Seattle. The trip where he came home with a tan and a new cologne. The one he never let me book for him. I smiled, thanked Jade, and walked to the exam room, trying to hold it together long enough to hear the heartbeat. But something had broken loose inside me. That night, while Nathan showered, I opened his phone. He hadn't changed the password after all. Evelyn's birthday as always. I scrolled through messages. Nothing under Brooke, but under B. Texts going back months. One from just days ago. Doctor says it's a boy. We should talk after the shower. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I took screenshots. Then I deleted my trail. I slid the phone back into place and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. Whatever came next, I needed proof. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The next morning, the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Nathan was already gone when I came downstairs, a half-drunk coffee on the counter and his gym bag missing from its usual spot. I stared at the cup, wondering if I'd ever really known the man who drank from it. I opened my laptop, pulled up a tab I'd left open the night before, and typed in prenatal paternity test, Discreet, California. The site looked clinical, efficient, and blessedly silent. They offered a non-invasive option using maternal blood and DNA from the alleged father. I scheduled an appointment for the next morning under my maiden name. The next task was less elegant. I needed a sample from Nathan, preferably something with saliva. His gym water bottle, still wedged in the passenger side of the car, would have to do. I tucked it into a Ziploc bag like it was radioactive and dropped it into my purse. That afternoon, I called Maya. She answered on the second ring. Sam? I need a favor, and I need you not to ask questions. Maya had been my assistant before I married Nathan, sharp, loyal, and fiercely protective of me, even when I didn't deserve it. We hadn't spoken in months. Done, she said immediately. Where and when? Tomorrow. I need you to meet me at the clinic off Oak Ridge and bring me a hair sample from someone unrelated to Nathan. Just one strand. Any guy you trust. There was a beat. Then, I've got you. The next morning, I sat in the waiting room of a discreet office tucked between a dentist and a title agency. Maya arrived 5 minutes later, dressed in leggings and a hoodie, sunglasses pushed into her. Curls. She handed me a small envelope. It's from my brother's brush. He doesn't even know. You sure you're okay? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Inside, the technician wore blue gloves and didn't make eye contact. He explained that the sample from Nathan's bottle would be compared to the fetal DNA from my blood, and the hair sample would be used as a control. We'll email the results within 5 business days, he said, sliding my paperwork into a file. Do you want us to call as well? No, I said. Just the email. As I left, the sun felt too bright, the air too warm. I wanted to climb out of my own skin. Instead, I went home and threw myself into the only thing I could control. The baby shower. Evelyn had taken the lead, of course, booking a private estate in Sonoma, complete with a rosé bar and calligraphy place cards. She'd sent the guest list without asking me and arranged for a photographer from Sonoma Life magazine. We'll want to capture every detail, she'd said. After all, this is the Carter heir's debut. I almost laughed. Almost. The next few days moved like molasses. I drifted through them on autopilot, smiling at Evelyn's texts, nodding through Nathan's distracted dinners, folding onesies and swaddles with shaking hands. The only thing grounding me was the silent promise I kept repeating to my unborn daughter. We will get through this. I will protect you from all of them. Then, 4 days after the clinic visit, the email arrived. I was sitting at the kitchen island, organizing RSVPs for the shower when I saw the subject line, paternity results, Quinn inquiry. My hands didn't shake as I clicked. My breath didn't catch. I had already prepared myself for what I'd see. But even so, the words landed like a final verdict. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it twice, 3 times. I scrolled down to the section that cross-referenced the control sample. Control sample, negative. Confirmed accuracy. I printed the report and placed it in a folder. Then I tucked it into the bottom of my purse, right underneath a pack of gum and my backup lip. Like it was just another errand. That night I set the table for dinner. Nathan came home late, shirt untucked, tie missing, cologne slightly sharper than usual. Big day? I asked casually. He looked up, surprised. Yeah, markets went wild. It's been chaos. I brought over the chicken marsala he liked and sat across from him, trying to remember if this was the man I used to laugh with until midnight, or just a very good performance I'd convinced myself was real. He picked at his food. The shower's Saturday, right? I nodded. Evelyn says she's having the garden tented in case of rain. Of course she is. He smiled faintly, like we were two insiders sharing a private joke. It used to feel like that. Now, it just made me tired. I excused myself early and went to bed, pretending not to hear his phone vibrate softly on the nightstand after midnight. Saturday came with too much sun and a sky so blue it felt sarcastic. I dressed in the pale green maternity gown Evelyn had gifted me, layered on a smile, and stepped into the waiting car. Nathan rode beside me, scrolling through emails, his knee bouncing with what I assumed was nerves. The Carter estate gleamed like something from a wedding magazine. Gardenias lined the stone walkway. A champagne cart waited by the fountain, and Evelyn, of course, stood center stage in cream linen, pearls, and control. "Samantha, darling," she cooed, air-kissing me. "You look radiant. You're too kind." I let her lead me through the maze of carefully curated details. Monogrammed. Napkins, name cards etched in gold, a floral installation that spelled out Baby Carter. Guests arrived in waves. His colleagues, her charity friends, socialites I'd only ever seen in magazines. I smiled. I nodded. I played the part. Then, 20 minutes in, the air changed. I felt it before I saw it. Whispers rustled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Heads turned. Then, at the edge of the tented garden, she appeared. Brooke Adams, pregnant, smiling, and walking in like she belonged. She wore a fitted ivory dress that hugged her belly like it had been tailored for the occasion. Her blonde hair swept into soft waves, face glowing in the afternoon sun. A few guests actually gasped. Evelyn, standing beside the dessert table arranging miniature lemon tarts, looked up and smiled with what I can only describe as pride. Nathan stiffened beside me. Champagne glass paused midair. "What the hell is she doing here?" he muttered under his breath, his voice tight. "That's a question for your mother," I said, eyes locked on Evelyn as she walked. No, glided across the garden to greet Brooke like she was a VIP guest, and not a ticking bomb. Evelyn took Brooke's arm in a gesture so familiar, so intentional it made my stomach lurch. Together they made their way toward the center of the party. Toward me. "Samantha, I don't believe you've met Brooke Adams," Evelyn said, her voice carrying just enough to ensure every nearby guest heard. "She's an old friend of Nathan's, from college. Isn't it wonderful? She's expecting too." The murmur around us swelled. I could feel the heat of 100 curious stares crawling over my skin. Brooke's smile faltered for a brief second as she looked at me. "I told her this wasn't appropriate," she said softly. But she insisted. Nathan looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "Mom," he said sharply, "this isn't the time." Oh, nonsense, Evelyn chirped, eyes bright. It's a celebration. New life is always worth celebrating. I smiled, slow and steady. You're right. In fact, I need just a moment. Pregnancy bladder, you know how it is. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked toward the guest house. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I moved like I had all the time in the world. Inside the marble-lined bathroom, I locked the stall and pulled the folder from my purse. I took a photo of the lab results, the header, the date, the conclusion. 0% probability of paternity. No ambiguity, no questions, just facts. Then I opened the baby shower group chat. Everyone was in it. Evelyn, Nathan, my mother, the guests currently sipping champagne and speculating about my marriage. I uploaded the photo. Beneath it, I typed, "Seems there are 2 babies at this party, and neither of them belong to Nathan. Evelyn, I hope this performance was worth it." I hit send, waited for the message to deliver. Then I placed my phone back in my purse, smoothed my dress, and stepped out into the sunlight. The moment I re-entered the garden, the air shifted again. Not whispers this time, just silence. The hum of conversation had gone completely still, replaced by a faint chorus of notification chimes and the soft clatter of someone dropping a fork against porcelain. I didn't need to ask if they'd seen it. The looks on their faces said enough. My mother was already on her feet, moving toward me with worry in her eyes. She grabbed my hand, squeezed. "Sam, I'm fine," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I actually meant it. Across the garden, Nathan was staring at his phone, lips parted slightly in disbelief. Brooke's face had drained of color. Evelyn, standing frozen near the floral, arch looked like someone had slapped her. I stepped toward them. "What's wrong, Evelyn? The party just died." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "This is a misunderstanding." "Oh? Then maybe you'd like to explain what part was misunderstood. The test results? The fact that neither baby here has anything to do with your son? Or the part where you paraded Brooke in like she was auditioning to replace me?" Gasps rippled. One woman near the front actually stepped back, as if witnessing something sacred unraveling. Nathan stepped forward, panic etched deep into his expression. "Sam, I can explain." "You had months to explain. You chose silence. You chose to let your mother orchestrate this mess, to lie, to make me feel like I was crazy for asking questions. You chose this." Brooke's voice was barely a whisper. "I never said the baby was his. I never asked to be part of this." I turned to her. "But you let her use you anyway." Evelyn's composure snapped like brittle glass. "You don't understand what's at stake here. This family has a legacy. Built on manipulation, on secrecy, on shame." I cut in, my voice louder. Now, firmer. "You didn't want a grandchild. You wanted a bloodline trophy. And when you realized my baby didn't fit your mold, you tried to swap her out like a dress that didn't suit your style." People were filming now. Phones raised subtly behind champagne flutes and floral centerpieces. "I built myself from nothing," I said, sweeping my gaze across the stunned crowd. "I worked for every inch of respect I have. And you know what? My daughter will grow up knowing exactly who she is. She won't inherit money or legacy, but she'll inherit truth and strength. And a mother who would never, ever let someone like you define her worth." For a moment, no one moved. Then my mother started clapping. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. And somehow, that small sound broke whatever spell had frozen the others. More hands joined. A ripple. A wave. Applause. Not the kind offered politely at speeches. The kind that rises from relief. From vindication. From watching someone stand up and say the thing everyone else is too afraid to say. Evelyn turned, tried to wave it off, but even her allies were backing away now. Nathan looked like a man slowly drowning, chest heaving with the weight of everything he'd just lost. He reached for me. Sam, I took a step back. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. Then I turned, walked toward the gate, and didn't look back. The ride home was quiet. My mother drove, knuckles tight on the steering wheel, as I sat in the passenger seat with one hand resting on my belly. The sun had begun to set over the vineyard hills, casting long golden shadows across the road. I watched them blur past the window, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. You were incredible, she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me felt like collapsing. Part of me felt reborn. Back at her small apartment, I changed into an old sweatshirt and sat curled on the couch while she reheated leftover soup. The television played some game show in the background, forgotten as soon as it began. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Messages, dozens of them, from shower guests, from mutual friends, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some offered sympathy, some offered praise. A few just wanted the tea. I turned the phone over, face down. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom beneath the faded quilt my grandmother had sewn, surrounded by the ghosts of a simpler time. There were no tears, no rage, just an aching, clarity, and a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was performing. I didn't feel like I was someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, someone barely tolerated. I was just Sam, and I was done shrinking myself to fit into rooms that had never been meant for me. The next morning brought sunlight and the smell of pancakes. I padded into the kitchen, barefoot, to find my mother at the stove and a familiar voice chatting softly at the table. Judith Carter, Evelyn's sister. She stood when she saw me, holding a mug of coffee in both hands like a peace offering. Her resemblance to Evelyn was unmistakable, but there was something gentler in her face, something that looked like regret. I hope you don't mind, she said. I wanted to see how you were doing. I nodded, unsure how to respond. She didn't wait for permission. What my sister did, it wasn't just cruel, it was legacy rot. That's what I call it. This idea that bloodlines and appearances matter more than decency. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. She always made it clear I didn't belong. She made a lot of people feel that way, Judith said quietly. She wasn't always like this, you know. She just got consumed by it. The name. The status. It twisted her. I looked away. That doesn't excuse what she did. Or what Nathan let her do? No, Judith agreed. But it might explain it. And maybe someday you'll want to hear those explanations. But not today. She placed a small envelope on the table. I'm not asking you to forgive her, or him. But if you ever need anything, space, support, a lawyer, there's a card in there. I'll make sure you get what's fair. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't have to. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. The headlines came. Fast. Carter heirs marriage implodes after baby shower bombshell. Nathan issued a statement through his firm. Carefully worded, vague, empty. Evelyn remained silent. They didn't fight me in court. Maybe because of Judith. Maybe because they knew they didn't have a leg to stand on. Either way, I walked away, with enough to start over. No gag orders, no strings. On a warm August night, while painting the nursery in my new rental, my water broke. My mother drove me to the hospital, and 16 hours later, Isla Quinn was born. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that scanned the world like she already understood it better than I did. She's perfect, my mother whispered, brushing Isla's cheek with trembling fingers. She is, I said, exhausted and awestruck. She really is. The weeks that followed were hard. Sleepless nights, round-the-clock feedings, mountains of laundry. But there was something fierce and grounding about motherhood. Every time Isla cried, every time she reached for me, I knew exactly who I was again. Not the Carter wife. Not the planner of someone else's dream, just her mother, and that was enough. I started taking small projects again, helping friends with parties, booking weddings on weekends when my mom could babysit. The work felt different now, lighter, real. I wasn't selling perfection anymore. I was building something honest. Judith checked in now and then. She never pushed. Just brought Isla gifts and offered to help with permits when I mentioned I wanted to open a small event space of my own. 6 months after the baby shower, the glass house opened its doors, a sunlit space with high ceilings, white brick walls, and an overgrown garden out back that we used for vow renewals and late brunch receptions. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I filled it with people who valued truth over polish. One Tuesday afternoon, I was restocking chairs when the door opened and a man stepped in wearing jeans and a paint-streaked t-shirt. He looked around, taking it all in, before spotting me behind the bar. "Sorry, are you open?" he asked. "I'm Matt, from the woodshop 2 doors down. Heard you might need help with a lighting install." I smiled. "I think I just might." He noticed Isla in her playpen near the window, babbling happily to herself. "She yours?" "She is." "She has your eyes," he said, a little sheepishly, as if he'd crossed some invisible line. I didn't flinch. "Thanks. That's the best compliment I've gotten all week." We talked about wiring, then about local lunch spots, then about nothing at all. Just 2 people, standing in a space that didn't demand anything of them but honesty. As he left, Isla looked up at me and grinned, and for the first time in a long time I smiled back, not out of obligation, not to keep the peace, but because I was happy, because the truth had broken everything I thought I wanted, and in its place, it gave me everything I never knew I needed.